But this was the perfect example I could think of. I'm gonna try and do the entire screen. It's, it's just a window. All right, so hopefully I can jump back and forth from the different windows. But I thought this was a great one for my experience because I felt like I knew what I was doing with this one. I ran the numbers quickly. I talked with Joanna quickly to get her feedback. I made an offer quickly. So I wanted to start off with saying the way I find my deals and create my deals might look different than other people, especially the people I see on this call. I know that we all have different buy boxes and goals. So I'm finding my deals right now through MLS. It's because that's currently my comfort level. I see MLS as a hot lead because they listed it for sale. So I know they 100% want to sell. My intentions moving forward is to get more comfortable with the cold calling off of Property Radar. But for right now, I'm like fully leaning on the MLS for my leads and then the realtors I'm meeting through those conversations for other possibilities. So this one came up on sale back in April, I believe, or no, it sold in April. So it was in March. It listed in March. As soon as it posted, it's a duplex. Asking price was 335. Right off the bat, I knew my numbers in that area and I knew I thought that those numbers would be good. So I immediately reached out to the realtor. And actually, I remember this one came up, went pending, and then came back on the market. So when I saw it pop back on the market, that's when I immediately called the realtor and said that, hey, I saw that this went pending, but then it came back on. What's going on? And so it happened as the first offer they had, they did an inspection. The inspection report scared them, so they backed off. So if you're not aware, I learned this just buying personal properties. If an inspection has been done, the realtor has to share all those reports with you. So make sure you're always asking. Now that's just like an immediate question I ask when I talk to realtors. Has there been an inspection or some type of quote for repairs? Because they will share those documents with you. So I did get the whole report, but just looking at the pictures, again, another reason why I liked this is because it looked like it was in decent condition. It's just older kitchen. I actually lived in a rental like this with like the 1940s kitchen, which I think is cute, but I know that that's something that could easily be updated. And then it's currently rented by grad students. So again, just looking at pictures, it looks like they were respectable renters. It's not completely trashed. And then looking at it with Joanna, she pointed out that there were some issues in the front, safety concerns that would have to be corrected so that your tenants are safe. So let's see if I can get to my next.
And what were those safety concerns?
So when we looked through the inspection report and the pictures, there were some issues with the foundation, especially in the front. The sidewalk was completely crumbled. The railings were not secure at the front doors. It just didn't look like it was safe to get in and out. And even the inspector in the report noted that. There were some foundation issues underneath the foundation in the crawl space. And I think this is the one that it looks like they were like duct taping and doing random, like very ad hoc kind of repairs. So it definitely needed someone to come in and do a full foundation repair to like make sure that the flooring was good. There were some wiring issues and there's like a side room they were calling a laundry room, and it again looked like they just kind of made their own laundry room in a spare closet. So that wasn't done properly. And then there was one of the bathrooms had been redone, I say, but it wasn't to code. So like the toilet was awkward to have to sit, like there wasn't the right spacing. So that was something we kind of noted would need to be done. And then again, in this crawl space, there was a question about asbestos. So we knew that there'd probably have to be an asbestos test.
Okay, I just want to point something out here. Let's did y'all get that list? Right, what a list. And so I didn't want to glaze over that. I wanted y'all to hear like some why to this and why it was done the way it was done. Yeah.
I have a question. Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. And I'm not sure that you can see all of that from the pictures. How did you figure that out?
That was all. So this is where and again, why I like the houses with the foundation issues, because typically there is some type of inspection report. So I don't even have to walk the property. Someone else has walked the property, taken the pictures and put them into this 50-page document. So I just went through his report and we could see the pictures that the inspector took. Which again, it was kind of nice that someone else paid for that. And so I guess that's something, and that's something Joanna and I have talked about, is the way Joanna teaches us, you can make an offer. And then when you walk through with your own contractor, they can point these things out. And then you go back and say, well, hey, I didn't know about all this stuff. So that first offer, they could have just negotiated down and said, well, yeah, I'm still interested, but this is going to cost $50,000. But they just got scared and said, never mind, I don't want it. So I kind of like it when there's already an inspection report, because I feel like that's one less thing I have to do. If I had gotten this property under contract, I still would have brought in my own person to verify what was documented. But it's like a sneak peek almost when somebody else comes in, because when you looked at those listing pictures, they look great. And then you get the inspection report and you're like, oh, I guess the pictures make it look really nice, but there's some stuff going on underneath it.
Mhm.
So the first thing I do when I find the properties that I'm interested in, I like having the deal review up because it kind of keeps me on track of what I need to pull for the information. And so I just, like Joanna says, I just go straight through here, and it's pretty it's pretty forward on what you need to do. For this one, because it was a duplex, it's difficult to find ARVs because there aren't a lot of duplexes that are sold as whole units. Let's see. So yeah, so I think I compared some updated comps. Oh, I think I updated this document. That's why. So that's the link to, I showed you the Zillow link. They were asking 335. It was listed with a realtor. There was no loan. They completely owned it out. So the ARVs, again, I found similar conditions for the homes. I didn't really find true comps. I think we were looking at other duplexes in the area, just the single units, what they would look like. So that, I think that was the hard part for me with this one, was trying to figure out what the actual ARV was. But what I like is I kind of just fill this out the best I can and send it to Joanna, and then we have a call to kind of go through it. So that's helped me get moving and take action. This one, I know this is one of the sections I'm working on continuing to ask the why more, which Joanna, the way you said it earlier, it reminded me of when you ask us our why, to keep asking the why. And so I'm going to take that moving forward of just being the annoying toddler and be like, but why, but why, but why, but why, until you can kind of get to it. But this one, they were getting older. They were selling off their investment properties. They just didn't want to deal with, I think they knew that they knew that it needed repairs and they didn't want to deal with it. The realtor was very closed off, and I don't know if it's just because it was how he was, or if it was his sellers. But when I kept asking the why, like, what are they going to do when they sell? He kind of closed off and didn't want to give me the true answer back there. It was currently occupied. The rents, you'll see here, they gave me the rent roll. I knew that we could raise the rents because in the area, 2 bedrooms are going for at least $1,000 each. We went through that list, and I do also have the deal analyzer that I went through to talk about repairs. So we had estimated about $34,000 for repairs. And then there's my deal. Let's see, I think that's it. So then if we go back to the deal analyzer, the little Zoom menu is always in my way. Try to see if I can, nope, it won't let me do it. All right, so we had determined that the ARV was about 275. So we went in thinking we would offer 235 was my number that I was thinking, with the repair costs of 34. I like using this just to help me have my numbers on a sheet, but because I'm not flipping, this is really just to help me document numbers. I think this sheet is more helpful, and Joanna, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is more helpful if you're doing the flip. So it's, you know what you'd get when you sell it. I'm looking at buying holding. So the numbers I'm looking at, I haven't created my magic spreadsheet to help me with yet. So I'm still doing it in pencil on paper, but I'm writing out how much the income is. And again, I think that's in the 5-day review of how to figure out what you should be paying so that you're making a profit. So when I ran my numbers, I know I had it somewhere here. I was looking to find something. I had estimated my holding costs at 457. So that was the property management, which I always include. So I had 117 insurance, and taxes and things of that nature. So that was, and it's interesting because now that I've done this enough times, I know that my buy box, my holding costs are going to be 500. I just estimate 500 all the time now, even though I can run the numbers, it's always around 500 for the types of homes I'm looking at. So then I knew what I needed my mortgage to be. So then we draft.
So real briefly, so you can do that deal analyzer. If you just go back to that real quick, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you take out the months to sell, right? And then you just put in the numbers for you to hold it, right? And so the net profit is going to give you a different number if you take those out. So this is your down, this is your closing, total out of pocket. The gross profit, you could just look at when you're holding the property versus flipping the property. You still want that equity. You still want the difference.
Okay, true.
Okay, so I would just take out that months to sell. What is your mortgage payment? It's not, 10%. It's what, so just fill in accordingly.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll play with that on my next one.
Okay.
And see how I can use that. So then right now I've just been doing that all on paper, to try and figure out the numbers. And I'm getting better at working backwards, because I think when I submitted this deal, I was still working in the wrong direction. I was starting where they were asking and then seeing how could I make that price work. But now I've realized I need to reverse that and start where it works for me, and how can we create that deal that works for both people. So for this one, this is the letter of interest I sent, based off of the current income and the repairs we needed. I gave a very low cash offer. And then I knew that when I asked the realtor if they'd be open to seller financing, he wasn't sure. And he's like, yeah, I think they would be, but I knew there were other offers on the table. So I threw this out there anyways. I had a feeling someone else, just knowing my area, I knew someone else would come in with a cash offer close to asking, but I figured this was worth a try, because what if they didn't? Then maybe I could make a cool deal. So this was my option 2, was a purchase price of $240. This is the other thing that I've learned since then, is that at the time I had my 1031. So in my mind, I wasn't considering my down payment. Now I know that better. Now I'm running 100% this. What is this going to cost as a mortgage? If that makes sense, instead of what they're actually financing, because this should be considered part of the mortgage as well. This shouldn't be cash from my pocket. But at the time I think that was my way of getting my feet wet, and I felt more comfortable because I knew that we had that 1031 cash to put into a house. So my offer was to pay them $902 a month, and then at the ends they would get the $324. So I did submit it, and they did not accept it, but I felt really good in how quickly I was able to run the numbers, and I felt confident in this offer, because I knew that if I did get the offer, that I felt good with that it would have worked. And then Celine, you had asked, this is the inspection report. Like I said, 61 pages. So again, and it's fun when you talk to Joanna about inspection reports. They're very thorough. They have to point out everything, even if it's not a big deal. But I love inspection reports because they really do look at everything, and they're going places where I'm not going to go. Like there's a good chance I'm not crawling into the crawl space when I do walkthroughs. So I liked, see if I can scroll through real quick. Like he pointed out everything, if there's any little issue. And then it's nice too, Celine, as you're learning, and I can share this if you just want to read through it. As you're learning, it's fun because they usually will explain things to you, why this is important, why you should be paying attention to it. So this is where, through my experience with real estate, just buying my own homes, I've learned a lot just studying the inspection reports. So here there was some runoff issues. I think that's why the sidewalks were all cracked. Some flashing issues, which again, everything looked okay inside. So you wouldn't know this until you actually had someone come look at the house. He did point out cracks, but I remember, Joanna, our conversation, you weren't concerned about the direction of the cracks.
Yeah, I don't want to dive too deep into that today, but the difference of a crack, if so, let's go back to that crack section real quick so they can understand. Do you see how it's kind of stair-stepped? It's just right at the bottom there. You see how it's stair-stepped? Like there's a gap above the brick, down the brick, and over to the other side. It's going, so you can see it that, so the one in the middle all the way to the right from the window, it goes down and then stairs and then stairs and then stairs and then stair steps. That is normal. Versus if it cracked all the way from the window down to the bottom, vertical. I mean, yeah, vertical, horizontally. Vertical. I'm like, which way am I going? That would be detrimental. So, and why that is, so I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm a certified home inspector. I do crawl spaces, I do roofs, I do all the, okay. So what they're explaining here is the separation. So there's a slight move to the house and it separated what was not a solid mortar. All you have to do is add mortar to this and it's fine. Okay, it's not the crack. That's not the crack of major concern, but they have to point out every single thing there. So it does need to be repaired in order for water to not penetrate and ruin the house and separate even more. Okay, so it is a fix, but it's not detrimental foundation issues like someone might think, oh my God, the house is cracking up. Right, and so I'm pointing this out because Kristen gets to be one of the foundation fairies. I think Angela wants to be one of the foundation fairies. And what I mean by that is most people run away from foundation issues. And you should if you're brand spanking new, if you've never done it before. So please take that note home. But if you've been doing real estate for a while, you've closed on at least 3 or 4 properties. You're understanding inspection reports and numbers and maybe you've done a flip. Like now you kind of get it. Right? Then once you get to that point, you're going to learn there's certain things you can easily repair that other people would run away from. Okay, so this is why I wanted to stop and point this out. This is not a big deal. This the stair step crack is not a big deal of concern. Okay. So this is why she's like, oh, I could do this all day long. Let's just get. Do you see how that turned for her?
Well, it was funny too with this one. I remember we looked at the inspection report and my husband was like, oh my gosh, this is so much work. And I'm like, yeah, but it's little work. Like we know a guy that can fix all this. So it's like once you get those people in your corners and you know which foundation company to call, it's not as scary anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what he was talking about with the stairs and the steps. This was all a hot mess. I'm not even sure how these tenants were getting in and out and not hurting themselves because the porches were all falling apart. The concrete was all falling apart. I think looking at the picture, we decided they must have been using the back door instead of the front door because it was a mess out front. I think those were there were some big ass trees too, which that's my new, I know Joanna hates trees. I'm getting to that point too where I immediately know how much it's going to cost for me to take out trees around the house because all this growth is because it's not getting sunshine. There are a lot of trees in the backyard.
So there's that, and one of the main reasons, and it actually just happened over by one of the houses that I have down the road a piece, as they say out here. There was a huge tree. We had a big storm, a huge tree came and fell on, actually there was two different houses, fell on a house. So my rule of thumb for trees is it must be away from my house, at least the height of the tree plus 10 feet, because they bounce when they come down. So they can't be anywhere around the house. And a lot of it is from roots that can displace the house, displace plumbing. And as Kristen pointed out, it can add foliage growth, mold growth, because it's not getting enough sunshine. And then you have mold on your house. But the big one is it comes crashing down. And it is a bulldozer when it does that. So those are my points on the trees. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've taken down enough trees now that it's pretty easy for me to guesstimate how much it's going to cost too. So that's another good person to have in your pocket is a good tree person. Something we learned in our Roanoke house is the higher they go, the more expensive it's going to be. And so our Roanoke house is on a hill and it's a 3-level home. So the roof is the 4th level. So we pay a lot of money to get people up there to take care of the trees in the roof. So it's just something moving forward. We're like, maybe we find a house that's not that tall. Here's that nice vent that they kind of just put it going out the window. This is obviously not to code. I'm not sure who thought that was a good idea.
Can you blow that up a little bit? It's hard for them to see what it is.
Yeah. It's like plastic. I don't know if you
vent to the dryer.
Yeah, so they used boards and plastic and then just have that tube going out the window. Not recommended. But that's again, if you have handyman in your pocket, that's a super easy fix.
Super easy.
I think that's beautiful because I would have appreciated a vent going out the window than up in a attic crawl space because I just replaced a roof because the vent was never going outside, so it was just blowing upstairs to the attic.
True.
And it just got all wet.
So the house, the duplex we just bought, it was the opposite. They had it going down to the crawl space. So now that's the one that I'd have to have mold remediation because they had all this hot air going underneath the house and it's the crawl space is.
I would have appreciated it out the window with the makeshift.
Yeah, at least they tried to get it out the house. That's a positive. And then this is just typical. It's 1940s house. Of course, the windows aren't going to be that great. But again, that's an easy calculation to figure out how much window replacements are going to be. And then the rest of it, I appreciated these pictures too, because he's pointing out just wear and tear in the home. Whereas when you look at the listing pictures, remember the kitchens looked cute. It all looked nice. He's showing a different angle.
Let's go back to the listing and look at the pictures real quick so you can see. Like, what would you
Someone needs
see?
to teach me how to get rid of the Zoom thing.
Click on it and drag.
I can never get it to move. Okay. So let's see. So this is the same, like they have no cabinets.
But it looks great.
Yeah.
Other than dated.
Yeah, it just looks dated, but the cabinets are in decent shape. The floor looks okay, but it's interesting how the lighting from the inspector shows a different kitchen.
And even the front shot of the house looks nice.
Yeah.
Until you get those.
Here's another one. This kitchen looks so clean and it looks great. Like I zoom in on these pictures and I'm like, I don't see anything. You can see a little bit of the paint cracking in the corner, but it's not what he's finding in the inspection. The other thing I found with rentals too is that I don't know how old these pictures are. This might not even be the current tenant. That was another house I put an offer on this year. Their pictures were old. They were pictures from before the frat party moved in. And so their response to me was, "Oh, well, it'll look like the pictures before we sell it to you." I'm like, okay. I don't know if there's anything else of, oh yeah, I liked that he was checking this is why I kind of like inspectors. I know Joanna says that you can do this on a cheaper price point, just getting a contractor to come through. But I mean, he's looking to see if the heaters are actually working, seeing the temperature that's coming out of them. Which again, these 1940 houses, it's good to know whether those things are working.
And this is important here.
Yeah, so this is the other thing. When I walk properties, I always open the sinks to look underneath because that's the first spot you'll see if there's a leak or an issue.
But also an S trap versus a P trap.
Yeah.
You
that
guys
was
learned that.
something.
So back in the day, S traps were fine. What does that mean? It means the pipes are the shape of an S versus the shape of a P. And so why that's important is because it can hold water. Okay, so S traps hold gas and water differently than P traps. P trap actually cuts it off so the vapors don't come back up the sink. You know, if you go to some sinks, you're like, what is that smell? You know, and it's because there might be an S trap down there versus a P trap. Okay.
That's,
I
we
just
just walked a vacant house and it's like the basement stunk. And that's my husband was like, I bet it's the water sitting in the traps. They haven't run the waters in a while.
That's my daughter's favorite smell. That's the smell she likes.
The stinky houses.
She would have. So I just have to say a note with daughters. Trisha, my daughter, this house, as we walked to the basement, she just stopped in her track and she's like, I had a vision. We can't get this house. We need to leave now. And I was like, okay. And she's like, no, I'm serious. We need to go. I was like, I don't know what that's about, but I'll take it.
I just sent my daughter and my husband to look at a house that I would prefer to put an offer in on. And I said, Lillian, the tenants are in the wholesale house, so they live there. So when you say, I don't want to buy this stinky house or something, it might offend her. So can you please refrain from,
Let's talk about that afterwards.
can you please not tell her her house is stinky while
Yeah.
you're there?
My daughter does the same. We walk through like houses that smell like cigarettes. And she's like, oh, this house is so gross. I want to get out. I'm like,
She likes it. I swear she likes that moisture wet smell
that's so funny.
and bottled up cigarette smoke for like 30 years. She's like, this is it.
This is the toilet I was talking about, where I don't know what they were thinking when they installed these things into this bathroom. But again, we looked at the pictures, like that should be an easy fix.
So let's go back and say what that
Okay.
is. Okay, so you see here that there's a minimum clearance that is needed and it's not meeting it. So it's not up to code. That's what he's pointing out here.
All you have to do is rotate the toilet
Mhm.
and it would be fine.
Do you have a UNO that you have to do in this township? Because I use that as like a negotiating tactic. Like day one, when I get in there, there's so many things I need to do. So that's why that upfront cost before I can even get my tenants like placed and everything, these things need to be addressed right away. So they have urgency, and that kind of gives me some negotiating power usually.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into that. But yeah, as soon as he says it's not to code, then yeah, I would use that language of we have to bring the house up to code.
And also in your seller financing, you could also say first payment doesn't even go out until 90 days. Because you need time to pull this together and then get a tenant in, and then this is how you make the tenant pay for everything.
Mhm.
Okay.
So here's here's I love this crawl space where they've like just kind of jimmied some things together to make it work. You can see that there's definitely some moisture underneath the crawl space. But again, when we looked at it harder, it looks scary, but it looks easily fixable with a professional to go in it.
So if we just pop up just a little bit on that page, you'll see galvanized plumbing.
Yeah.
So that would all have to be replaced. Eventually, maybe not the day you buy it, but just know that you should include that in your numbers. Okay, and not because of corrosion, but because it's, there's like lead poisoning and all kinds of things that come from these pipes that no longer are part of code. So once you start rehabbing, it's different across the nation, so don't quote me on it. If you're like rehabbing, like, I think it's 50% or more in a lot of cases, they'll ask you to come up to code in certain areas. Okay, so this is why the scope of work from your contractor is so important. Because once you change so much, then the inspector is going to go, oh, okay, that means you're going to change even that much more. And this is why I don't want newbies getting into flips right out of the gate, is because you don't know what you don't know yet. The inspector can come and say, all this needs to be replaced. Okay, so that's why I want to point that out. If you see that in there, so she doesn't have to crawl under the house. She got an inspection report that shows what is underneath the house. Okay, instead of PEX tubing, instead of, you know, copper pipes. Galvanized is no longer part of code, just so that you know.
He's just pointing out again some of the plumbing. We had this at the house we just bought that we live in, which the toilet was loose. That's like a $20 fix. The plumber will come and do that. The electrical, this was interesting. He could only find an outlet for one side, the electrical shut off. So that was one of my follow-up questions with the owner is where is the shut off for the other side? I like the pictures, but a lot of these too, even if it didn't apply to the house, and if you're just trying to learn, again, he just includes everything just so that you're aware. So I think these are great learning tools to read through these. What was that? Just electrical information. The outside, again, he catches things that I didn't even pay attention to. This is a really low wire, which is too low. People could easily hit that. Yeah, and this laundry room just had some weird stuff going on. Unprotected wires. Again, it looks like they kind of did their own repairs at one point. I don't know who would have left that like that. A lot of this is just stuff I would expect in a house that was built in 45. Again, we rented a house that was that age, and so it just kind of just reminds me of the house we were living in. A little bit of stuff with the foundation again, but they're all easy. Oh, I love this. There's growth. They can't say it's mold, so they'll just say that it's growth. But again, I know a company that'll come in and help clean that out.
Why can't they say it's mold?
Because they're not testing it. I mean, most people, when you look at it, you smell it, you know it's mold, but to say it's mold, you have to do an actual test. And that you have to be certified to be a mold and like tester. It's a whole thing.
Most home inspectors are not certified in that and can't say it. And that's why they also can't say things about the cracks either.
Yeah.
They just say there's a crack. They can't say large, small, or type of crack. They just got to say there's a crack. Or yeah, so they have to be vague. And this is some part of me gets super frustrated too, because I've done so many rehabs that I just rather have a contractor walk in and give me my scope of work, because it's referred to. Once you guys get this, when Kristen shares it, we'll make it part of the training here. But once you guys run through this, you're going to see it referenced almost in every section. Recommend professional contractor Qualified, there you go.
That one.
Qualified professional. So what are you? You're not a qualified professional. So that drives me nuts, but
And even some of them, he'll say they recommend repair, or it's just a DIY, just so you know about this, but then they still tell you contact a qualified professional.
yeah. So there's a lot of that is frustrating for me because I've done so much of the work myself. But what's important for you guys is literally this visual right here that you're getting. And understanding, what does an inspection report, like how much did this cost you to get, Kristen?
This inspection was $0.
Well, so yeah, this one's 0.
The one I've done, it's 400.
400 to 500 is typical. Pest inspections are cheaper. They cover just about everything, but they are not going to cover electrical. Like they'll give you wood rot, they'll give you if the toilet's loose, they'll give you, so you'll have an idea of anything big. And in an inspection report, they're not going to include any termite damage because they're not pest specialists. So do you need to tent the house because of termites, or tent the house because of asbestos, or, you know, like 6 1 half dozen of another. So again, this is why if a contractor walks through there, they're going to look at everything just like a home inspector and just like a pest inspector and say, here's my scope of work according to what I see. So this is a great learning. Thanks, Kristen.
I wanted to stop on this one because this is a great example of why I love going to open houses and walking properties when it's raining, because then you see where the water's going. And this is a great example of like, there's no shoot off, like it's coming out right at the foundation of the house, which is a terrible, you don't want that. And obviously that caused issues to the concrete there. So like with all the rain we've had in my area, I'm like, this is the perfect day for me to go look at houses now, because I can see where the water's going to be sitting, or if it flooded in the basement, where it's coming into the house. Some more under stuff. Again, he climbed up into the attic space. That's another one where it's like, you wouldn't think, you're not going to notice some of the issues, but they'll find where the little leaks are in the roof. You could also have a roofer come do this as well, but they're going to want to replace the whole roof always. They'll always give you a quote to replace the whole roof. He did point out pest evidence. Some type of rodent. And that's it. That was a long one. Was there anything in the numbers? I feel like I went through that section quickly, and I tried to do it in the order that I run the numbers when I look at a property. Is there anything that I missed, or you guys want to go back to get further understanding? Gasoline.
Yes. You said you know about how your holding costs work. And I can't right now remember, how do you determine holding costs?
Okay, so I always do property management. I know my property management guy's 10%. So I start off of, if the rent is going to be 1,100, I know the PM cost every month is going to be 110. And then you can use your Zillow typically, but you can also check with the realtor. You can check with I think, well, does Property Radar pull taxes and stuff?
Yes.
But you look at your taxes. So this is for the year. So then I would do the math of how much is that every month. And then for the insurance.
Let's back up 2 seconds
sorry.
on this one. So property taxes may not be correct. So you need to know when you purchase it, do the taxes change on the sale of the property, or do they do assessments every couple of years? Like in North Carolina, it was like every 8 years they were doing a tax assessment. So if you bought it, it didn't change the property taxes until they hit that 8th year. So you didn't know if you're buying it in 2, 3, or 5 years. Now they've switched it to 4 years. So you have to know, this is part of day one. This is why super important to understand your market, because you know your market, the property stands up like Waldo. It fits all your numbers. This is what Kristen's trying to explain to you, is that this stands up like Waldo out of a batch of properties that fits her buy box. She knows her numbers because she's been studying her neighborhood. And the property taxes, do they, question to you, Kristen, do they update at the sale of the property? Or do they have an assessment every couple of years?
Blacksburg does an assessment every couple years, and they just did a big one in 2023. So like the whole town was pissed off. So that means we're not going to have another assessment for, I think it's every 5 years.
Okay, so know what the average increase is. I mean, it's been tough the last couple of years, I'm not gonna lie, because 2022, everything went through the roof. So you also need to calculate for that. So when you're calculating your property taxes, when you're running the ARV and you're running down what your max purchase price is for holding this property or flipping this, whatever it is that you're doing. But also if you're holding, is the cash flow you're covering taxes, insurance, maintenance, property management, all of those things. You might want to add like a 3 to 10%, depending on your market, markup on that for it to adjust. So prepare for that adjust. Look at how it's increased 10% there. So that's a huge, great example.
I want to say I'm curious what my math was. I've started doing everything in shorthand, so now I can't even explain what my numbers are. Okay, so that one was the taxes, was the first one. 240 would have been my property management fee. And then I think the 100 I was estimating, and again, you can call your insurance company to get like an estimate of what your insurance would be on it. But that's because we have properties in the area. We know what our insurance would be. So I've been estimating 100 for that. But like Joanna said, my total came to 457. And to stay safe, I round that up to 500 holding cost. And then I still want to add a little buffer, like how much money do you want to make every month? So I don't want to break even. I want to be making 300 to 500. So then I'm adding on my cost. And so that was giving me, I needed to, if the rent was 2,400 is what I could be getting, I needed to have a mortgage of 1,900 or less for me to be making a good profit and be comfortable.
And because you know your market, you know that to be true. So let me retract and say, even if you somewhat know your market, you have to know if you're in a volatile market or not for that to change. Now, let's go to Florida. Florida's market changed drastically in the last couple of years. Okay, my son's triplex in Treasure Island, when he bought it, he had significant cash flow. And then they upped the property taxes and insurance, like went through the roof. And then he's almost nose to nose. Okay, so if he had bought it nose to nose or almost nose to nose, he'd have been underwater and having to pay to be, to own the property instead of having the tenants pay it down. So understand the volatility of your market as well as knowing what today's taxes are, and can you sustain a 10% growth in taxes and insurance. Okay, so keep that in mind.
I have another.
Yep.
Kristen, you said, your mortgage needs to be 19 or less. 19, what?
Oh, 1,900. So 1,900 a month. And I'm that person that where I'm like, if it's a little bit over, that just means I'm not making the 500. Or no, that 19, sorry, I take that back. So I'd have to be less than 19. So the further below 19, the bigger the profit I'd have. So that's where, let's see what so I was asking for, I wanted to pay a principal interest payment of 900. So that would have been giving me some good buffer room. but it would have gotten the seller to their asking price. But I'm pretty sure someone came in with the cash offer. And that happens a lot in this area. Anything in the 300s, there are people with cash that will just come buy them. But I'm also like, and I've said this in our other calls, just throwing spaghetti at the wall. I'm at the point now where I'm like, I'm going to send my offer, because what if nobody else comes in with cash and I'm the only offer they have? And I've been in that situation where you're trying to sell a house and you get nothing. Like, sellers just want something. Just show me that. I just want to show them that someone is interested in your house.
And then what's also happened in the last few months is the offers that you've put in at the beginning of the year, they're coming back to you saying, hey, is this still an offer? Because they didn't sell the price that they wanted. They thought they were going to be that seller and wait for the top of the market to sell, and what, it passed? What do you mean? So
and I'm offering it as like, this is what works for me. If someone will come in and pay you what you're asking, I think it's crazy, but good for you. I'm happy that you can get that price. But if you can't get that price, then let me know and we can find something. But yeah, that one that he was asking 209 and I offered him 160, he has now dropped down to 189. He has my offer on his desk, but I'm not going to chase him down. He can come back to me if he really wants to.
Christine, I have a question. How do you come up with the rehab cost from the inspection report?
Yeah, so where's I need to move this little thing. Get out of the way. So I like using this as a cheat sheet, just to do estimates. So you go through and figure out what all you need. So for this one, I was like, I put all the blinds in. If I was going to rehab the whole thing, so like a new kitchens on both sides, the doors needed to be replaced, and this was all based off of that inspection report. New flooring.
And let me point out here that the black column there is the pricing of her Lowe's or hardware store in her area where the house is. So let's just say this house was in Georgia. She would use the Georgia Lowe's and Home Depot because they're different prices. And that's where you're going to shop and buy out of for that house. Okay.
And yeah, for this one, again, this was one of the first reviews. I'm sure my numbers are lower than what they should have been. And this was like, some of these things I get just having conversations with Joanna of like, okay, what do you like? We kind of estimated, let's just say it's 5,000 for that. These numbers came to 18. I always double whatever this is going to say. I've done flips before, and I always know it's going to cost more. And these are not including your labor costs sometimes. So unless you have a contractor come through, which you can, like, that's also a great thing to have a contractor in your pocket. They walk the property with you and they can give you a quote of what all that would cost. That's your best way to get numbers. So yeah, I doubled it there.
Let's give an example of Donna. So Donna she would put the Dill Analyzer and Lowe's side by side. And the reason why she would do this, she would go down the list of a dishwasher. What does that cost in her area where the house is? So she'd look up a dishwasher. And what's great about Lowe's specifically that she pointed out was it has suggestions. You might need this piping or this fitting or this whatever to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and she would include that in the price. And she's gotten to the point now, just her last house, I think she was $1,000 off.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, from the contractor scope of work. That's pretty doggone good. So if you guys could just, repetition again is the mother of all learning. So if you can run, a house, this is why choosing your market is so important. I can't stress it enough. Really knowing your market, grabbing houses in your market, analyzing them, running them through the Deal Analyzer, having conversations with either motivated sellers or the realtors. Okay, getting the story, pulling it all together. Maybe you see one that fell out of contract. Hey, was there a report on that? Can you send it over? Just like Kristen does. Right? And then you got that inspection report, and then you can really deep dive into your rehab calculator. Okay, run through Lowe's and get the calculator or the deal analyzer up, and then start running the numbers and see what you come up with. Okay, so great exercise.
I've also printed this sheet and used it as a checklist as I walk through homes to be like, yes, no, count the windows. Because then it reminds me of what I would need. And it's typically once I have it under contract, I would do that. But this is kind of a help. It just helps you estimate when you put the offer in. But then that's what Joanna's taught me, is that your first offer doesn't have to be the final one. If I walk through and then I see stuff that, oh, well, wait, you didn't tell me that there's a leak in the bathroom, then I'm going to adjust my offer because now we have other repairs that we need to do. Which that happened with the house I closed in May. There was a lot that came back in my inspection for repairs and water leaks, like long-term water leaks. And I'm like, you told me this house was good to go, and it is a hot mess. So I was able to get them to drop the price. And even the realtor was so desperate, he met that the seller didn't want to lower it anymore. And the realtor's like, I'll take it out of my commission. So he met me where I had asked, because he's just like, I want to be done with this house.
So good. What other questions y'all got? Is that helpful, Celine? Good.
Yes, thank you.
That's my biggest tip, is just to start doing this, because that's how I've gotten better at this. Is we go to a lot of open houses. We get quotes for things just to see what it would cost to do certain things, talk to different, like your contractors. That's going to be your biggest person to help you get those numbers. Joanne is always like, don't get stuck in the numbers, just ask for help if you don't know. So don't let the cost, like the estimated repairs, stop you from putting in an offer.
I think a lot in what I do is the scarier it gets is just the unknown. So if I'm scared about a number, it's really easy to just take a picture of an HVAC system, because I'm not that. I don't know all of that. Does this look good? Oh, I think that's a great unit. It looks like it has been maintained. I might change this about it, which is like a $30 fix, or that's so old, you're going to need a new one. Is a big price difference, and it's scary. But if you've made contractor connections, they will literally pick up the phone on a text message and give you a price. It's like a very limited conversation. Here's a picture, here's a price. And they want the work just as much as they don't mind taking a second to give you an idea of a scope of work. Now, maybe when you do your second walkthrough, or you're really in your negotiation process, you can bring that contractor with you, or if he's not sure, has questions that you can't answer. But when you're just trying to throw spaghetti at the wall and just get a number, then usually a text message is kind of like, hey, do you mind telling me a little bit about this, or giving me some insight? And that can be your roofer, your plumber, anything that scares you, like, oh, this could be a lot of work. Just get somebody else's eyes on it that does that kind of work, and it's not scary to them.
Yeah, and that's what I did with that one house. Is I can't remember what the issue was, whether it was like, I think it was the smoker in the house. So I just reached out to my they're like a Green Home Solutions. I was like, hey, like, this is the situation. He's obviously been changed. I was like, what? Yeah, I was like, what do we do? How much would it cost before, like, and he hasn't been in the house, but he's like, base price, it's at least $4,000 for us to walk in the door. We can add on more depending on how bad it is, but it's at least 4,000. So that was my starting price of, okay, well, clean air repair is going to be this much.